Hey everyone, this is Christine DeGraff, and today this is TNT Boot Camp with myself and my co-host Ronnie Bincer. Ronnie, say hi.
Hello, everybody out there. Thanks for joining us.
And today we have a special guest. I believe everyone in the audience already knows her, and if you don't, you soon will. We have Miss Mia Voss. Hey, Mia.
Hey, girl. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm a little distracted because my tiara won't come on Google Effects, and it's really upsetting me.
Well, but that's definitely a beautiful tiara that you have there in real life.
Yes. This is my Rhonda Green tiara that was Rhonda Green from, oh my gosh, I just forgot. Where's Rhonda from? With Bethan.
Craft Star?
Craft Star. And then they made this, and this is a little gear that came from Kirk Sherrod. So it takes a village to make a tiara for me, apparently.
So what's wrong with your normal tiara?
Oh, girlfriend, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, you said in the green room you think I just wore it out on Google Effects because everything else works but the tiara. So, Ronnie, I'm sad. I feel weird.
There you go. Now it works. But you've got a real one on, so that'll just have to work for it now. But that actually brings us into a good talking point for a moment. How do we deal with the fact that this technology, even though it's wonderful and great, it doesn't always work all the time? What do you do about that?
Oh, it is such a balance, Christine. You and I had it a lot when we would do our shows. I mean, you just never know when you come into a Hangout what is going to work. It could be the comment tracker is off. So I think it's a balance of limiting your expectations a little bit and then just going with the flow. I mean, it happened to me with Sarah Hill the other day. I was doing comment tracker, and remember how it's done that to you guys? Have you had it when it's just the letters? Mm-hmm. So I just had a piece of paper ready and just went like this so you could read the comment.
Oh yeah, when there wasn't a background behind it.
It wasn't white. It just was letters across your face. So you just kind of have to go with the flow and always be prepared. But that's why getting into Hangouts super early, not like we did today. I came in 5 minutes before.
I have found that when I decide to slide into a Hangout like 5 minutes of, that is the time when nothing's going to work and I need to restart my computer.
Yes.
And it just never fails. So yes, coming in early. But for those of you who don't know Mia, Mia is a host, an interviewer, and a strategist of Google Plus Hangouts on Air and YouTube shows. She's done over 300 episodes, including the Mia Connect, the Food and Booze Show with Chef Dennis, and 15 Minutes on Air with me, which we ran for about 6 months. And most recently, she was hired by Steady Demand to do something called end-to-end Hangouts. Mia, can you tell us about the end-to-end Hangouts?
Yes, it's a great combination that the Steady Demand team came up with. Basically, they're bringing in the clients, they vet them, and they get them interested in doing Google Hangouts, and then they set up these shows, and then I come in as the Google Hangout host and help them MC that so that either one, the client doesn't even have to come on board, they just have someone that represents them, and then they talk to specific guests, considering, depending on what the topic is. Today we're actually have Black Lotus, and the Black Lotus, Sean Mark is going to be on too. So there's a combination of it, but it takes the pressure off of these brands and knowing how to do Hangouts, how to host them right off the bat, but gets them out there with content.
Yes, it does. But now Black Lotus, that's a hosting company, right?
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. Okay. So that's like. How do you come up with questions for these people? How do you have to learn about cybersecurity before you can, host the show? How are you handling that?
It's a good question. You know what's great about the Steady Demand team is that everybody has their piece that they bring to it. For instance, on this particular client, Jerry Whitehead has done all of the research and come up with the questions and given me a script, which I also take a look at as well. To be quite honest with you, it's awesome. It is a total learning curve for me. I learn a ton as well about the different threats that are out there. So it's what I love to do is do Hangouts, so it's not uncomfortable for me, especially because I have the script, but then we also have somebody that's in the Hangout with us that's monitoring the comments. It's that full, it takes a village kind of thing to do that. I'm waving my Kleenex around, sorry. Typical me with something goofy going on. But it's been great to work with a team because, you know, Ronnie, Christine, we've all done it on our own, but to have this whole group that everybody's strength is brought to the table, forget about it.
It's great. Good stuff. So when you, well, Christine, you're also there too, aren't you, in the end-to-end? Aren't you part of that?
Yes, but I'm going to be behind the scenes.
She's going to be like the Oz guy with the bells and the pulleys and the whistles.
So what are you doing behind the scenes with that? Are you running like circloscope activity?
Yes, and graphics. Definitely doing the graphics, the headers, and the YouTube thumbnails, things like that.
Again,
Cool.
it's that she's great at that, and then working with the clients. So then I'm assuming also using Circloscope to vet out and then get these events out there and build the buzz.
Yes,
For the events. I heart Circloscope. Have I told you that recently?
Yes, you have. Speaking of that, speaking of tools, I wanted to talk about what tools and techniques that you use to market your Hangouts, both before and after.
Well, I've worked on it over the last year, but come up with a pretty specific process. So I always use the analogy. It's like if you've ever heard them talk about Saturday Night Live, like the show ends on Saturday night at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the process begins on Sunday morning and goes through the whole week. And because I have a 1 week time frame for my shows, I basically have I do an Excel spreadsheet that has process map of this day I send out this day I send out this. I've got the full-on thing that I do because it's kind of a double tracking thing too. There's the event itself, and then there's the process with the guest. So I kind of double track at the same time, and I do have some people helping me with it a little bit. But I'm pretty particular about it. But I do start the Monday before, and then the show's on Friday, and then I do my back crap crazy. But I built it slowly.
So you're at the same time that you're promoting the upcoming one, you're also promoting the one that you just did as well.
Yes, yeah, the repurposing of it is great. I'm working on that. It really has a ton of value to it if you can get a process for repurposing. I've been really lucky. A lot of my guests just share that crap out of it afterwards, which is awesome. They love it. It's marketing information for them. Robert Crusoe is a great example with using Bundle Post. I see him pop out shows of, I was on this show with Mia Voss talking about this. So I have my guests also repurpose it because it's great marketing for them too.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mia, would you do us a favor?
Mm.
You came in kind of late, so we didn't get to test things out. When you're not speaking, can you mute yourself? Because both Christine and I are echoing through your microphone. Or something else. There you go. So, other question that you had, Christine, I think you were going to bring up was the idea of hosting and the skill of being a host. Not just the technical. I mean, that's part of it. But what happens once you get past the technical? This technology is gone, and you are now running a show. How do you figure out, how do you keep the conversation going?
Yeah, I definitely have that question. I've been hosting my music hangouts lately, and I noticed that the musicians, they tend to do really well when they have a guitar in their hand, but if you want to talk to them, they kind of freeze up. They look like deer in headlights. And so I feel like I'm often trying to keep the conversation going and think of questions to ask, and trying to develop that skill of not having those those awkward silences. So I was wondering, how do you keep it going? How do you keep your guests engaged and keep them lively?
I think it depends on how many guests that I have. And to the audience out there, this is proof of what we were just talking about because we were in the green room and it sounded fine with the sound, right? Couldn't find, and sorry, my headphones are in the car. Bad Mia. But this is typical of Hangouts, right, guys? Like it sounds great in the green room and then you get going and you get something crazy. You know what, Christine? It really depends on the guest. I know what you're talking about. Sometimes it's like you're pulling teeth and you say something and they go, yes. And that's it. And you're like, okay. Apparently you don't want to go on any further about that. I have a combination. I've had it where I have a lot of guests and I'm wrangling. I got the little hook, had a couple people. So there's too much, and then there's a little bit of a lag. But sometimes I get a good idea of it beforehand. So doing a pre-hangout with somebody that you're not familiar with is always good. Then you can get an idea of whether of what's going to be a point that'll get them going and talking. But I think with musicians, you're right, that their thing is the singing and the playing, and then it's totally different when you get them in front of a mic.
Yeah, I never found that I really had a problem before when you and I did a show together. You know, I kind of feel like I used you as a crutch. Like if I couldn't think of something to say, I knew that you were going to fill that gap. And, you know, it's nice to have Ronnie there as a backup as well, and, you know, we play off each other. But when I did try to be the only host, and one of the most painful experiences is I didn't have a panel. It was just myself and the musician, and they were very quiet. And I just was, like, running out of, you know, ideas, so I just kept saying, okay, we'll play another. So.
That's probably why he was doing it. He knew that was his strength. Was if I just stay quiet enough, she'll get me to play one. I felt the same with you. I think all of it. Anybody who's out there that's co-hosting a show does have that. It is a nice crutch that one person, you know, you would see something totally different. We would get on a show, and Christine, you'd bust out this long, wonderful like way that you had taken something, or you had done a bunch of research, and I would sit there and go like, yeah. What she said, and it was great, you know. So everybody has their different strength. That is the great thing about having a co-host.
Absolutely. I've lately been bringing in extra people into the music hangouts that know more about music than I do, so they can ask those questions. I think we have a question from Jeff. Hey, Jeff.
Jeff.
He wants to know, what are some tips for HOA hosts and producers for repurposing content?
I'd say scheduling it. I mean, it's just getting ahead of it and getting it scheduled. I'm going to try and use bundle posts. Robert had been on my show. I feel like I'm plugging that, but I heard it's a really great tool, to get, you know, to schedule that out so that you can get that ahead. Say, okay, I had this great show with, you know, like you guys, in a week I would say, like, check out my fun interview with Ronnie and Christine, and schedule that out 2 or 3 weeks ahead just for giggles, because that's the great thing. Unless it's a holiday-based thing, most of the time it's a lot of evergreen information, and you could just bust it out at any time and say, you know, I had a chance to speak with XYZ, and you can schedule that out weeks in advance. So I think it's scheduling. What do you guys think?
I agree. You know, and I think that you need to make a plan to actually repurpose. I think that you can, you know, for example, I'll use a good example is when Mia and I did our New Year's Day hangout. We had 4 hours. We had 22 guests. We had great quotes, great content, and I kept saying, yeah, I really should like pull some quotes out of that and repurpose it. But I never scheduled it, and so it never happened. You know, and I think that maybe that's the thing, is you have to say, okay, on Monday the Monday after my show, I'm going to timestamp. The Tuesday after my show, I'm going to do this or that. And then, like you said, make a plan, and then it's more likely to happen.
And I agree with you. I think you have to make the plan and then turn everything else off, because you guys know you could just you're getting something done, and then you have that up and you get everything pop up. So, you know, to get really practical, I think it's when you make that time frame to do it, and then just shut everything else off and only have those 2 windows open. Maybe it's just me and my squirrel attention span. I don't know.
No, I think me too. Another good question from Jeff. He wants to know, do we write out our questions that we're going to ask our guests beforehand? And I'll start. I'll go first. I wrote out a few for Mia, so I just wanted to make sure. I knew that, you know, that we could make it work whether I have questions or not, and sometimes I don't write them out and just wing it. But, you know, sometimes I feel like, hey, I want to be a little more prepared and make sure that I at least touch on a couple of points. How about you?
Yeah, I just like Kitty Bomb behind you. I have to point that out.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it's just this little silhouette. I feel like he's giving a shout out to Bob. Hey, girl. Hey. Just gave you the look. I love it. I think it's a great combination of having the notes and then going with the flow. So you do have those couple of points. So it doesn't have to be, so, Christine, what do you think? Although you should do that, it would be funny. But it's just more, yeah, you have talking points that you definitely want to get to. And then I ask my guests as well, is there something specifically that you don't want to bring up or that but you would like to have asked? Or what, for me, my fun style is bringing out things in guests that most people don't ask them. So, so can I let the cat out of the bag on a possible guest because I'm really excited?
Sure.
I reached out to the kid that's on The Walking Dead to see if he wants to come on my show, and he said yes. So Carl from The Walking Dead may be on my show, and I'm going to try and ask him questions that aren't like nerd out like everybody else does. So.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I would probably be nerding out. I will let you know. I'm warning you. But I mean that kind of thing of like asking questions of guests that aren't the typical ones, and that brings out a side of their personality. So it's always kind of fun.
How about you, Ronnie? Do you have questions prepared, or do you usually just kind of go with the flow?
Mine shows tend to be a little different because they're usually subject drawn and less personality drawn. And so I'm more of a present, I'll bring in people that I want to have interactions with, but it's usually around a topic. So we can focus on that topic, not just on that person. And I think because of that, it makes, at least for me, it makes keeping the conversation going a little easier because you never can cover enough in that kind of a scenario. So I do have questions, but I don't write them down.
Have you ever just, like had a show where you wished you had questions because you did run out of things to say and you just felt like maybe you weren't prepared?
Yeah, and that's called winging it, and that's part of what we do as a host. And the more skilled we are at doing that in life as well as in front of a camera, I think it starts to show. And that might bring us back to another question for Mia. I'm sorry, I'm stealing your questions, Christine, because they're good ones. So Mia, here's the big one. Do you think that being a good host inside of a Hangout on Air, there's a conversational host, you're working with people, and you're trying to pull things out of them, do you think that's something that is natural, or is that something that you grow into?
At Combo Plate, I'd say it's tough for anybody to get into that because you get nervous and your brain's going a million miles a minute. So yes, especially in the beginning, having a bunch of questions and preparation is always good. And to go back to that question, sometimes what I find is that there's not a lot of lags, but there are things I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought of this like afterwards that I wish I would have asked them too. So I think it's a combination. The biggest thing you need to decide is who you gonna be. And is that going to be the conversationalist? Is that going to be like how Jason is? Jason is similar to you, Ronnie, and in that it's very much topic driven. And so you always want to have that plan of what you want to deliver to your guest. If you put that in the event that you're going to deliver this, you better make sure you deliver that. So, but I think it's a little bit of both. Sometimes for me, it's been easy to be conversationalist, although I get exhausted afterwards. But I think you have to decide who you're going to be, and then you go from there, if that makes sense.
Would you say, Mia, that you're normally the way you are inside of a Hangout on Air? Is that your normal persona?
Oui. That's yes in French.
Yes, very good. So in that sense, if someone, and I bring this up because I do a lot with Hangouts, I train a lot of people, and a lot of people are wanting to use the tool because it's neat and it's wonderful and it allows you to do a lot of cool visually based activity, but they might not have that personality that allows this conversational thing to really be part of what they do. They're more technical. And so as a result, you can still do something with a Hangout on Air, but it's different than what Miss Mia does.
As well it should be. Everybody has their different style. I think you can do a little bit of a combination. Probably the biggest thing, I know you guys all agree with this, is if you're trying to be someone you're not, that goes in life in general, it's going to be painful to watch a little bit if you're trying to be funny and you're not naturally funny or really serious. I had the flip, and I know you guys have heard me talk about this before. When I first started doing Hangouts, everybody was very serious. There weren't any kind of variety shows, and I was trying to be that person, and it was awful. I'm sure it was okay, but for me, it wasn't fun. Then I thought, forget it. I'm just going to be goofy, and it works for me. I mean, I'm serious about the topics, and I'm very, very prepared. But I get to be my personality, and that's what works for me.
And then one other thing that ties into that, just to wrap it up, the concept that we're using a tool inside of a social environment makes an assumption that you are social. And so as a result, some people that are coming and using the tool that aren't really all that social because that's not part of their skill set are saying, well, it's one of the tools, I should be using it. And at some point, they might need to rethink, you know, is this something, maybe you need a co-host that's going to be more the social person, and let that help work through the process with you. So it's a tool, but knowing how to use the tool and using it well are two actual different things.
And if you even should, I mean, honestly, you may just want to use Hangouts to have conversations with clients, or private Hangouts that you can record and make it private, and then it can be, that could be the content. It does not have to be this variety show. Now, and I've been experiencing the opposite lately after going to ShiftCon and all these different things of, and even having Greg's family here this weekend, they've heard me talk about the show, but until they sat in the room and watched it happen, they were like, oh my gosh, that's the best. And then having brands that were at ShiftCon watching Chef and I do shows, or watching me do shows, then they got inspired by it, and they saw how they could do it. Not how I did it, but that they could actually do it and create content. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of fun to watch people get fired up about it.
We have a good question from Steven, who's over on YouTube. He wants to know, where did Mia learn to embrace the important basics associated with radio talk shows? For example, Mia always remembers to make it clear who the guests are in midstream of every show.
Buffo.
I don't know what that means. So.
I just wanted to say it because I like it. You know what? I think I may have even picked that up from Jason Weiser. Started doing that when he was deciding to do podcasts, and it really did make sense to me to say, because if you guys know it, you can watch how your numbers rise and fall at the bottom of the screen here when you're hosting the show. So if you start off with 3 or 4 and then you've got 20, you realize there's this number of people in between minute this and minute this who've tuned in and may not know who it is. So it just more is picking up. I mean, that's the great thing of watching shows about Hangouts and watching you guys, is I go, ooh, I picked up on something new. You always pick up on something new. I do.
I know who was really good at that was David Oldenburg. He was always trying to remind me to do that, you know, say, okay, it's 10 minutes till the hour, and we're talking with Mia Voss today about Hangouts on Air, you know. And,
actually, you know what? I take that back. It wasn't Jason. It was David. You're right. Like, Jason started doing it too, but David Oldenburg, talk about a radio personality. He definitely had the process going on that I know you and I picked up a ton from him too.
Absolutely. Definitely. We've got some more comments out there. See.
I'm being a good girl, and I'm not looking at anything but you because I'm relying on you guys.
I'll bring one up that BL pointed out here, saying that it comes down to the fact that being an expert and being a great presenter are not necessarily related.
Preach that.
Good
That's
point.
True.
And I mean, maybe that's a point where something like the end-to-end Hangouts, you know, you can bring in the expert and then bring out the, you know, the host like Mia, the presenter, to help, you know, really keep the show flowing and you know, be there to question the expert and make sure that the answers that they want to give are actually come out during the show. So Mia, how did you know that that this was going to be your career path, or when did you know? Like, I know you started doing Hangouts, what, about a little over a year, 2 years ago? How long has it been?
It's been February of 2013, so about a year and a half. I feel like I'm on the dating game a little bit, by the way. So Mia. Like the old school, we're old enough to remember that. But I started in February or March of 2013 only as doing interviews. And it's funny to try and explain it to people. They're like, well, why did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. It's what I wanted to do. I like talking to people. I knew some people in my personal life. One of my first interviews was the mayor of my hometown, who I went to junior high school and high school with, and now is running, you know, this town that I grew up in. I just thought that was so cool. I wanted to showcase him and say, look, you know, look what this guy's doing. Look at the difference he's making. And then it turned into the Power Chat, first as social media, But really making it into me as the client and the Hangouts as the business was just about a year ago when I made the jump to light speed, to use a Star Wars reference.
Hey,
and turned it into a business.
I want to point out that this is a very interactive environment, and so because we weren't sure what WAFO meant, Stephen's telling us. It's borrowed from a variety magazine. It means a hit, great, blockbuster. SRO, what does SRO mean?
Standing room only. I think it's standing room only. I might get that one.
Okay, it could be standing room only, yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. That's awesome.
We've got some more questions out there. William Rock wants to know, just before you go live, what do you do to prep your heart rate to calm down and catch your breath? And I'll expand upon that a little bit because I know that I don't think, Mia, you feel pretty calm during Hangouts, but part of your job as a good host is to help your guests calm down. So, you know, if it's not you yourself that needs to calm down, how do you help calm your guests down?
And this is something I learned from, honestly, from being in Ronnie's group. I told you this thing gives me a headache, by the way. I had to do it. Sorry, guys. Oh, I wish I had my real one. I think it's the prep work.
Wait. You wish you had your real one, which is really a virtual one?
My real one is my virtual one. Yeah, that's right. When it moves and flows and the whole thing, busted. You know, I learned that's from going into the Hangout. The mastery group taught me a lot of being prepared so that all my guests have to do is show up. I do coach them a lot. I tell them about the chat section up here so that I can, you know, to mute if they're typing, and just give them a lot. And they're like, well, I want to do comment tracker. I'm like, you just sit there and be pretty. Don't do anything. Like, you sit there and hang out and do the thing. So it really is about keeping them calm, for sure.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I think we talked about this, who knows, it was probably 2 years ago now, when you, me, Chef Dennis, and Dan McDermott, I think, were all brought into maybe Eric Angus.
Eric Angus.
And he was asking about hosting and what do we do and what do we think is good. And I do remember us having a conversation saying that if somebody that's a guest is sort of freaking out, it's a good time to get conversational with them in the green room and get them used to just having a conversation. Because then when you press the button, it's less different.
You know what else you have to prep them on, you guys, is that big high they get afterwards when they've done their first Hangout and they're all like, woo! And they feel they got it done, they got calmed down, their heart rate came down. What do you think, you guys? I think it's usually about 5 to 7 minutes in, once they get talking, that they calm down and really get in the flow.
Yeah, I think so. And generally for me, you know, I usually feel pretty comfortable, but there have been once or twice where I had that deer in headlights moment of total panic attack. But as far as the post-Hangout high, I remember about a year ago is when I started doing Hangouts, and like you really felt that for the rest of the day. You kind of felt on top of the world. And not so much now, except when I do my music Hangouts. And I did a 4-hour one last week, and I felt like I had such a high afterwards that the next day I couldn't hardly get out of bed. It was like a crash.
But you know what? That says something, Christine, in describing that, and you guys pay attention to that. Like, that's what you really love doing. I mean, that's something you've gone back to, and so I love hearing that from you. Of like, if that's the thing that's really working for you, of doing these music Hangouts, and you're crushing it on it too.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes.
Nicholas Cardot. Oh my gosh, I did it again. Cardot. He's gonna kill me. Nicholas. He's not French. He wants to know, have you ever had a guest on who gave those really short answers? I think we were talking about that earlier. And it became really difficult to get them to really open up and share their expertise.
If I have, it's been on a panel, so I can just fill in with somebody else. And if you want to get Nicholas annoyed, just say, "Ooh-rah, wrong," and he'll really get aggro. Maybe say it like Marines. Watch him go to town. But yeah, I think I usually, if I've had people like that, I've been able to see that they're on, they're short, and then I have them on a panel.
That's a good idea. So, you know, just decide, okay, well, they're not going to be like the main guest or the only guest. the Sarah Hill type guest that can handle a whole show on her own. Someone that is more quiet, you might put them in with 4 or 5 other people.
Yes, or even I had Andy Lyons on the other day, and I mean, talk about, I could have just skated in like half asleep. I was so comfortable knowing, I love how she handles herself. That one I don't even think I did barely any prep for that, and it was just like riding a bike. It was great. So you get those people that they have their own shows, but they also can fill that gap and not just fill it with aimless chatter, but really, really good context. Did you see us shout you out the other day, Ronnie, that the only person I know that gets Ronnie Bincer to say moi?
It's true. It's true. I met Andy early on in my Google Plus Hangout world. So let me ask you a question, Mia. Do you always meet with people, especially if it's their first time? Do you always meet with them before, in a vetting hangout?
I do, but I make it short so that they don't, that it's just, the show itself is enough time for them. I mean, think about it. I have them get in a half an hour earlier. I have them send me a lot of information. I have them share. So I'm having them do a lot of work in order to be a guest. But if they're really new, I will definitely have them come on. I've learned the hard way. I mean, think about it. And again, hopefully the echo's not happening, but I've had people that came on, and it's no guarantee. That's the other thing. I've had people come on. I've done the pre-work. And then somehow when you get a couple of people on, it changes the, you just, things go wrong when you get 4 or 5 people on a hangout. And so I've had sound go out when we've had it before, but I would suggest definitely for people who are starting out, always do one, even if it's 5 minutes. Hey, can we get on a hangout for 5 minutes just to test? Because they think it's great, and then they show up and they're sitting behind a big giant window that they look like a black silhouette or something. Yeah. You guys have seen it all, I know.
Here's a great. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a great question from Deborah Rock here. She wants to know, when interviewing people live with an audience, it's easy to see the reactions and know when you're losing them. When you are hosting a show online and it's not going as expected, how do you retain your audience? And I can relate to that a little bit. As far as, I've done some in-person presentations, and if you do start to see their eyes glazing over or they're checking their cell phones, you can maybe change the direction you're going in. But what about when you're hosting a hangout and you start to see that viewer count dropping off? What do you do? Or, how do you change the direction? Is that your feedback, or is there any other feedback you get from the comments? What do you think about that?
I rely on those numbers dropping. A lot of times there's nothing you can do about it at the time. That is some pre-coaching I do with guests, though, and tell them, especially when there's a several. And you guys can see it if you go back and look at the YouTube numbers. The longer that it goes, you can see the numbers drop off. You can actually go back on YouTube and see where people have dropped off and start looking at patterns. Is it that they talk too long? Is it that they belabored the subject too long, like right now because it's 3 past the hour? I just saw Ronnie's note.
Hey, that was private.
I didn't say what you said.
We're a 40-minute show now, though, so not 30 minutes. So
okay.
We still have 7 minutes to go.
Well, then, great. Let me do a follow-up then. So, Mia, here's the deal. If you're doing a vetting conversation with somebody and that host, you know what you were planning on doing, and they seem to give you one-syllable answers, and you're not really able to find that magic thing, would you then consider bringing in another panelist along with you that you might not have thought of before? In other words, does a vetting of the client, the interviewee, does that change who's going to be actually part of the show when you go live?
It really does. That's why I start my process as soon as possible. But then again, I also leave it open. I mean, I've had people that I've met 2 or 3 days before, and I say, hey, why don't you come on the show as well? So I have a little bit of I just kind of rely on a magic potion kind of thing sometimes of just if you just meet people, and I just get this sixth sense feeling sometimes of like, gosh, these people would be great together. I had the one where it was the gal that runs, she's in she has MS and does a lot of tours around to help people with disabilities know where to travel. And Lynn Abate told me about her 3 days before, and she was a perfect fit for it. So you can kind of fill that in. Or if you're in the middle of the show and it's getting really slow, you can just say, who wants to jump on the show if you're feeling really bold, right?
Good idea. Yeah.
I've done it before. Just, hey, who?
Especially if you've hung out with them before and you know that they can get in and run with it. Otherwise, not so sure about that one.
No, I mean, you be careful with it, but just be ready to hit the, eject button.
Yes.
Got a question here from Nicholas Cardot. I got it right this time. He wants to know, what's the most embarrassing or frustrating mistake, technical or otherwise, that you've experienced in your HOA career?
You guys go first. I want to hear yours. Or is that only for me?
It's for you, baby. You're on.
Damn it. I just did it 2 weeks ago with Sarah Hill. I got so excited. She asked me to show my office, and I had her white box, and it's only she and I, and it just was her, like, laughing at my, my yay wine sign and my, Bob Voss box, and, then I had to go, and then because it's, 30 seconds or whatever behind, I had to go back and see all the comments of, like, we can't see your office, so that one wasn't too good. But I tried to make up for it, so that wasn't fun.
I think mine was, I think I said something, I think it was on one of Mia's shows. I think it was the bald, sexy, and shiny, or something like that, furry.
Well, that was classic.
Bald, furry, and shiny, or I don't know, and everybody started cracking up. But probably, actually, no, I know. My cat, and there's always a cat bombing me, but it was kitty porn. I'm telling you, this cat had her leg up in the air, I mean high up in the air, and I'm sitting there talking, and Mia is just cracking up watching the cat behind me.
I'm laughing still. If you looked up NSW, not NSFW, it would have the video of your kitty. Oh, bless her.
So sometimes I make verbal faux pas, and I wasn't sure if it's politically correct enough. So Nicholas is now emphasizing that, so I'll just bring it right on the screen. It's for you, baby. You're on.
I like it. I was happy with that.
Well, that's good. That's good. But for me, some of the biggest faux pas I've felt after the fact is if I've used language, like I said to somebody, I said, and she's got a cool, look at that cute little lower third. Now, to me, it was innocent, but when I saw the face of the person when I mentioned it sort of drop, it's like, uh-oh, I shouldn't have said little. Maybe that's insulting. And so it's just the terminology that you use sometimes after the fact. It kind of makes you wonder.
Did you think of it like when your parents would say, "Oh, how's that little career of yours?"
Right. Yeah, how's that going?
How's that little job of yours? How's that little radio show of yours? You guys realize I get that all the time still.
Yeah.
How's your radio show? And then I post on on Facebook all the time. I'm like, it's not radio.
But that reminds me of other things. For example, I have a relative in Brazil. I have a couple of people that live in Brazil that are related to my family. And my aunt, or aunt, depending on the part of the country you're from, she said that her son runs a little toy company. And then later I find out the little toy company happens to be named Sega. And he didn't know that was not a little toy company. And he's actually running it for Brazil, all the country.
She has problems with proportions.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, we're almost out of time. I want to give Mia a chance to tell us how people can reach her. And I also want to tell everyone that our next show is Monday, November 17th, and our guest is Ammon Johns. And I hope I said his name right. So
Yeah.
I think we're all close, right? Ammon, I did it too, so.
Or Amand.
Or Amon, right?
We will definitely ask him what's the proper pronunciation.
And what's the worst pronunciation, right?
There you go. But he's going to focus a bit on marketing, right? That's the marketing end of things, and what's he do, what magic he brings. In fact, Mia, you were part of a couple shows.
I was Ammonized.
All right.
Awesome.
And it was good. What was great about it too? He has a great perspective, and then he brought on a great panel that worked me over like a rib. It was awesome.
Worked me over like a rib. That's
Worked me like a
rib. Okay, Mia, so how can people find you? And what are you up to next?
I'm really pushing for people to subscribe at themiaconnect.com. It has all my shows, blog posts of the shows. That's my real estate, so please go over to themiaconnect.com and subscribe because I don't really send out a ton of newsletters. And when I do, they're funny. How about that? This week I have Gary Hirschberg with Stonyfield Organics. He's amazing. I met him at ShiftCon, and then a representative from Dr. Bronner. So we're going to be talking about ballot issues that are coming up for election, and a little bit on GMOs and eco-wellness, getting a little cray-cray on that. And then hopefully I have Chandler Riggs coming on from The Walking Dead so I can nerd out on Halloween.
Awesome.
Yes. Thanks for having me on, you guys. It's always fun to talk with you. You're my staple items on Hangouts.
Thank you. Anything for you, Ronnie?
I'm just glad that we. What was the question? I thought we were.
Any last words?
The last words are, Mia, I'm glad to have you on our show here, and it's been fun.
Yes.
Fist bump.
Everybody, thank you.